figure this out. Let's figure out my camera. Let's see. Yeah, sure. Let's do that. Oh, let's bring this over here. There's the mic. Mhm, mhm. Mer- Maybe this is like this. Mm. Today and things I don't love, but that I'm probably just going to live with. Okay. Hey. Yeah, I think that'll work. Anyway, I'm just going to pretend. Just going to pretend. This is fine. This is fine. This is fine. I've got a couple monitors going and like one camera. In one camera, the lighting is much better than in the other camera. So I'm just going to pretend. If you're watching on YouTube, woo, that lighting. That lighting. Mm, delicious. Anyway, Instagram's much better. Too bad I can't get that. It's just the difference in the cameras here. Maybe I can do that. This is scintillating content and you're so welcome. Well, I'm just going to do it. Let's do it. Let's go live. Hi. Hi, hi, hi. You'd think I'd be ready, but alas, alack. All right, here we go. Let's do it. Hi. Hi, my name is Dr. Shannon Coates, and I am a voice pedagogy person. I'm a singer, and I am a singer. I am an educator and a voice pedagogy maximizer. Let's just say that, shall we? And good morning to California. I love it. Good morning. Yes, it's very morning there, right? It's 11:30 where I am. Very morning where you are. Love it. So, what are we talking about today? I go live pretty regularly, once a month. I'm trying to do it once a month. Just trying to do my best. I'm doing my best to go live once a month to talk about voice pedagogy things and subjects related to teaching, singing. And the replays for these are hosted on YouTube right now. They might go onto my website at some point, but right now they're on YouTube. And so, yeah, we're talking about today. We're talking the subject matter for today, as you may have noticed, somewhere it might say that is Master-Apprentice is not the bad guy. I don't know if you have noticed in the last little while that there is this narrative that the Master-Apprentice model is bad and that no one should be doing Master-Apprentice because it's bad. There's been this kind of like narrative creeping in, and I have heard it from several sources, and I have said myself in previous live office hours, in other kinds of ways. I have talked about it myself, about the fact that this Master-Apprentice, it's bad. And so in the last little while, I've done some examining of that since last year ish. I've done some examining of that, just sort of like thinking through, and I've come to the conclusion, friends, that the Master-Apprentice model is not actually the problem. What? It's not actually the problem. In fact, what we actually do in teaching singing, whether we acknowledge it or not, is actually apprenticeship based. So it is apprenticeship. What we do, this is in fact the model that we use when we are teaching singing. And what is the problem, I think, is that we are not examining closely enough what it means to be an expert in a learning situation or in a learning environment where we are the teacher or expert, and how we need to use our expertise in that learning environment. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, right? So we've had this we've started to have these conversations in voice pedagogy and sort of pedagogy circles, if you will. We've started to have these conversations around student-led learning, agency supporting learning. How can we be less coercive in our teaching? I mean, we're all asking, like, I don't want to be a coercive teacher. I don't want to be a teacher who's employing power over in my teaching, right? So we are all having these kinds of conversations. Not all. These kinds of conversations are cropping up. How do I be a less coercive teacher? And in order to truly get to the core of being a more supportive agency supporting teacher, we have to do a little bit of uncomfortable examination of what that means for me as a teacher, right? What am I doing that's already a little bit not quite as agency supporting as I would like it to be? And what am I doing and what can I change? And that conversation is very uncomfortable to have sometimes. And also, we have not necessarily had models about how to do this. The vast majority of us have not had um, teaching that is as agency supporting as it could be or as we may have wanted, right? For lots of reasons. Not there's lots of good reasons about why, or maybe not good reasons, but there are lots of reasons, right, about why we are in this situation. And so what I have observed to have happened in lots of cases, in some cases, in many cases, I don't know, I don't want to be absolute about this, but what I have observed to have happened is that rather than examining our role as the expert in the room in the learning situation or in that learning space, we have instead opted to blame the model. So that is a lot more comfortable. If we can just blame the model and say, well, that is a highly coercive model, that is a power over model, and I don't use that model, therefore I am not working in a power over way, and I am not working in a not agency supporting way. And so we kind of let ourselves off the hook, not even kind of, we fully let ourselves off the hook around our teaching and our teaching practice and how we show up in the studio because we say, well, I'm not using the Master-Apprentice model. That's bad. So let's get into it a little bit today because first of all, and I actually wrote some notes. So who knows? I might even stay on track today. Dare to dream. I might stay on track. So first of all, let's just talk about what a model is. And I'm going to divide teaching models into two really broad strokes, two really broad models, just for the sake of what we're talking about today. Okay, so two broad models. We have what we might think of as lecture-based learning or a lecture-based model. And this is the model where we might associate this model the most with sort of academia or education. This is an educational model, of course. They are both both models are educational models. And this is typically how we acquire conceptual information, conceptual knowledge. This is where we sort of sit in a lecture hall, someone explains the thing, the teacher explains the thing to us, the expert decides what we should know, what we need to know in order to be successful, tells us what we need to know, and then the expert assesses whether or not we have learned it by some kind of assessment method. We absorb the information, of course, or try to, and the expert tries to assess whether or not we have absorbed that information in whatever way means they are using. This is sort of like history, theory, biology, math, English, all of these subjects that we typically associate with academia or with an educational classroom education. And then we have something called apprenticeship-based learning, or I'm going to call it apprenticeship-based learning. Apprenticeship-based learning, yes. So we have lecture-based learning, apprenticeship-based learning. And this is, I'm going to broadly again say, this is how we might learn to acquire embodied skills or motor skills, if you will. And these are these are the ways that we learn sport, trades, dance, other performance arts, surgery. How to do surgery. That is an apprenticeship-based model of how to learn to do surgery, right? An embodied skill. It's a motor skill in some ways. So we learn in that case by doing, by refining, by repeating, experimenting, adjusting, by doing essentially. And the expert or the teacher is the person who has more information and more experience, and they are going to guide you through the process. And that is sort of apprenticeship. So it's important to note, neither model is inherently coercive. Neither model is inherently power over. And both models can be more agency supporting, can be delivered in an agency supporting way, in a or in a cooperative way, in a power with way, and both models can be delivered in a power over or coercive way, right? These are the models. The models themselves are not inherently necessarily coercive. They are not inherently power over. And they are not inherently student-led either, right? They are not inherently agency supporting. They are just the models. So in a lecture-based learning model, there are lots of movements in classroom education toward creating more student-led learning environments, creating more agency supporting learning environments, assessment protocols that allow for us to actually assess learning rather than whether or not you can take a test. There's a lot of information and a lot of research and a lot of progression in education circles, classroom education circles, around creating a less lecture or a less power over dynamic in classroom education. In the same way, apprentice-based learning, so the way that we might think, okay, we're going to embody this skill, same thing. We are trying to figure out how to make sure that we are starting to have learning environments that are power with, where we support acquisition of the skill, not just I'm telling you what to do, and then I'm going to tell you whether or not you did it right, and then I'm going to assess whether or not you've learned, right? We are working in both of these models to find more student-led or agency supporting, if you will, ways of delivering learning, ways of supporting learning. So, as I said, neither model is inherently coercive, but can you see from those two models, the way I'm describing those two models, that in fact, the thing that we do when we teach singing is apprenticeship-based. That is the model we are using, right? So when you tell me, no, I don't use apprentice, I don't use master-apprentice. Now, master, of course, that word is really fraught. So I use Master-Apprentice in the sort of description, but also I am intentionally using apprenticeship-based learning model as we're talking about it here, just because not great, but so apprenticeship-based learning model, or a lecture-based learning model. Both of those can be delivered in top-down ways, in collaborative ways, in agency-supporting ways, or in deeply controlling ways. It is not the model that determines the power dynamic in the learning situation. It's the philosophical lens that does. It's our understanding of what our expertise is for and how we use it. So let's just bring this, I did this already a little bit, but let's just bring this into singing in a more intentional way. Let's bring it into voice pedagogy, singing. As I said, learning to sing is not a lecture-based learning model. So when people say, well, I'm not doing apprenticeship-based learning in my lessons, I go, what are you doing then? Are you just lecturing to them the whole time? You're just telling them what to do the whole time? Like you're just handing out materials and like showing slide presentations and asking them questions and giving them quizzes. Is that what you're doing? They're never singing. They're never actually practicing the embodied skill. that what you're doing? No. So you are doing an apprenticeship-based learning model. That is what we do. That is how we learn to sing. That is how we learn any embodied skill, any performance art. Again, when people say, well, that's not what I'm doing, I understand why we have this sort of reaction to Master-Apprentice. But again, the reason we have the reaction to the idea of being an apprentice-based learning model is that we think that that is inherently power over. It is not inherently power over. That's just the model. It's our philosophical underpinning, it's our understanding of how we use expertise that dictates whether we use the model in a power over way or not, or whether we deliver the learning in a coercive or power over way. Let's talk a little bit about where things get interesting. We also, when we are sort of divorcing ourselves or creating this when we're sort of creating this villain arc for Master-Apprentice, right? We're like, oh, this is the worst thing, and I'm never doing that. When we're creating a villain arc for apprenticeship-based learning, we are also often saying, yeah, what they did back in the day, that was just terrible. And so they were doing it wrong. And again, it's not the model. It's our understanding. Thanks. It's our understanding of how we deliver the model that is the problem. And let me say this. So I'll say this and then we'll go to another thing here. So what we've actually done in most of our academic programs now, and what has trickled down into independent studios and into outside of academic teaching, is we've tried to cram what is an apprenticeship-based learning model into a lecture-based learning model, right? So we try to cram it into our universities. And then we wonder why we are at such odds about grading artists. Because we're trying to grade the information that we would acquire through a lecture-based learning model. We're trying to use that grading and assessment system to grade and assess the information that we acquire through an apprentice-based learning model. And those two things are really hard to mix. They're not pretty when they go together. They don't go together very well. We wonder why things feel confusing. We wonder why students feel disempowered. Now, and we also, then teachers feel very responsible for delivering knowledge because we are trying to make this skill learning process behave like an information learning process, right? And that doesn't, there's some cognitive dissonance that happens there in lots of our teaching situations, both in academia or in classroom education, and as it trickles down into, maybe trickle down is the wrong word, but as we bring that understanding into our studios as well, into our independent studios as well. So if the model isn't the villain, what is? The problem is our assumption about expertise, right? That's the thing that is tripping us up. That is the thing that we have to examine. Many of us were trained to believe that the role of the expert is to diagnose what the student is doing wrong, explain why it's wrong, prescribe the correct solution, judge whether or not the learning has occurred. And if that is our unexamined definition of expertise, then our teaching will almost inevitably be power over. We will miss opportunities to support agency and learning left, right, and center, all over the place. Even when we are working from the best of intentions to be collaborative, to share power, to have a more student-led understanding of how this works, even then, until we change and examine what we are using our expertise for, what the role of the expert is, or the teacher, we will continue to be far more power over than power with. And here's also the part that requires some examination. Friends, Thank you. I love the like, here's the other thing that requires some examination, my friends. The closer we sit to dominant cultural identities, or the more intersections of privilege we have, the easier it is to assume that using expertise to tell people what to do is what we are supposed to and entitled to do. The closer we are to dominant cultural identities, or the more intersections of privilege we have, the more likely we will be to assume that our role is to use our expertise to tell other people what to do, to tell our students what to do. That is the unexamined part often, and that is part of the reason that often our understanding of expertise goes unexamined. And also part of the reason that when someone says, I mean, if it's coming up in you like, yeah, but Shannon, I am student-led, how dare you? Do a little bit of examining of what it means to be an expert for you. Do you think that the use of your expertise, the reason that you are the teacher, the reason that the students are coming to you is so that you can tell them what is wrong with them and you can, or what they're doing wrong, or even if you put it into the positive sense so that you can help them to change their singing, then you may need to examine how you are perceiving the role of the expert in a learning situation. Those identities, those cultural identities, those dominant cultural identities, those intersections of privilege, they come with a script that says, I know best. I know what's best for the person who is coming to me. The reason they're coming to me, it is, yes, exactly applicable in ELA. Yeah, 100%. It's applicable in all the areas, right? It's applicable in all the areas. Parenting, it's all of the areas it's applicable. But yes, exactly. In education, we're talking education here. So the more of those intersections of privilege we have, the more we assume, or we have this script, inherited script, that tells us that we not only have the right, but we are not doing our job unless we tell people what to do. And that's how we are supposed to use our expertise. Unless we diagnose, unless we prescribe, unless we make sure they know what they're doing. And also, we have this understanding that that's why they're paying us, right? And if we don't do that, then we're not doing our job. So we end up often being directive, corrective, controlling, unintentionally. Because that's what we think we're supposed to use our expertise for. And I would offer to you that what we are supposed to use our expertise for, or the way that we want to reframe the use of expertise, is that I am here to offer you options and the information that you may want and need in order to be able to make decisions for yourself, in order to do risk assessment for yourself, in order to make decisions for yourself about what you want to say with your voice and how you want to say it with your voice and how that works best for you to say it with your voice. That's what I'm here for. Not here to tell you what you need to do next. I'm here to support you to figure out what to do next. That is a very different thing. How does this look in the studio? A singer comes into the studio. I do have a couple of examples here, but let me just see here. Oh yeah. So a singer comes to the studio. We've got maybe some registration. Maybe the registration is shown. Or they may come in. So they may come in not knowing that their registration is shown, or they may come in knowing that their registration is showing and it is not as elegant as they would like it to be or as smooth as they would like it to be. Either one. They may come in not knowing that, and they may come in knowing that, and that's the thing they actually want. That's why they're there, is to make sure that they can smooth out their registration. So they can move between chest voice and head voice, if you will, or however you want to talk about registration. It's a whole topic for a whole other line of ours, but they want to have a smoother transition between points in their voice. Or maybe they don't know. Maybe they don't know. When we are in, I use my expertise to diagnose what is wrong with you and what you need to change, and to tell you how to do it, and then to tell you when you have done it. What do? In the case of the person who doesn't realize that this is a thing that they are doing, we tell them. We say, "Oh, I'm really noticing." Even if we do it in this way of support, we use the supportive language. Even if we're not saying, you have a really strong break and you need to fix that. I mean, if we're saying that, we're really we're really working hard here to like really tell singers what is going on with them, right? Or even if we're not using that language, even if we're using, I'm noticing a pattern of you transitioning, and there's a big difference between the two, and so let's work on that. Notice how I communicated that there's something wrong, and that's the thing that we need to work on, and also I am telling you what you need to work on. Or the singer comes in and that is the thing they want to work on. And we say to them, "Great, I know some great exercises. Let's start here. Yes, that one was more smooth. That was more smooth. Good, you did it. That was more smooth. See how great those exercises worked? How great I am at telling you what to do? The exercises worked. Good." Both of those ways of working in the studio are coming from, I use my expertise to tell you what to do, versus the singer who doesn't know that that's something that they want to change, or even that maybe they don't want to change it, versus, I would love for you to have some options I would love to explore some options with you so that you can make more decisions about what you want to do. So that when you are singing and you want to really show the registration, you can. And if you don't want to show the registration, you don't have to. Let's explore some options together. And let's start to figure out when you might want to show the registration and when you might not want to. What are some reasons you might want to show registration? What are some reasons you might want to lean into the break, if you want to call it that? What are some reasons you might not want to? Let's start to talk about that. So notice how in the singer who is not yet fully aware of all of their options, I'm offering it as another option. I'm not telling them that they have to change the thing they're already doing, or that what they're doing is, needs to be fixed in any way. I'm just saying, like, hey, you've already got this option going for you, but it isn't yet an option, right? Because it's the only thing that you can do. So now let's figure out what your other options are. In the case of the singer who comes in wanting to be fixed, wanting to have a change, or wanting to be fixed, yes, we say, okay, so this is a thing that that you want to change in your singing. Great. What will you be able to do when that is changed that you can't do right now? Mm-hmm. And where are you already close to being able to do what you want to do? Where is it close? Where are you able to have that elegant registration? 25%, 50% of it, 75% of what you want. Where is it close? Let's build on that. So I notice I am supporting them to be able to notice the thing that they want to do, not the thing that they don't want to do, not the thing they want to fix. And I am supporting them to be able to find where their body already kind of knows what to do a little bit so that they can then do that for themselves. And then we are working to understand when you might want to make the choice to show the registration and when you might want to make the choice to smooth it out. Not me saying to them, yes, you always have to have smooth registration. You don't even always have to have smooth registration in Western classical singing. Not always. I mean, most of the time, but not always. So that reframe of I'm going to use my expertise to support you to find the information you need to be able to make decisions for yourself. That then becomes student-led no matter where I am, no matter what model I'm using. And no matter what the student comes into me with, right? I work with a lot of beginning teachers who do not have the experience yet to be able to diagnose what's happening in a singer, or even to be able to say, oh, they shouldn't have that registration showing. Or lots of beginning singers where they don't know where to start on the diagnoses, right? They don't know where to start. Or when a singer comes in and says, I want to change this thing, I'm here to fix this thing, I don't like this thing, they don't know the exercises to use yet because they haven't been teaching long enough to know any to have to have gathered that experience and information in that way, right? So they're not experts in that sense. But do we tell singers or teachers that they have to wait until they've gathered all? How are they going to gather the information? How are they even going to get that information? They have to start somewhere. We all have to start somewhere. The way you can start somewhere and be an effective teacher without having memorized any exercises or learned any voice ped or done any anatomy and physiology and still be an effective teacher is by working cooperatively, by working in a student-led agency supporting way. Singer comes in and you say, what do you want more of in your voice? What do you want to be able to do that you can't do now? Great. Where are you already doing that a little bit? Let's build on it. See how that means I have to know how to teach versus I have to know, for me, that is the essence of pedagogy. Knowing how to teach, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to diagnose. Knowing how to diagnose is not the essence of knowing how to teach. These are two separate things. And when we confuse them, and we think the reason I have the way that when we are confusing those, I know that you are still working when you are confusing those two things. When you are saying, in order to be a good teacher, I have to be a good diagnostician. When you say that, when you confuse those two things, when you conflate those two things, I know that you have not worked out what it means to be an effective teacher yet. You are still using your expertise to tell singers what to do. True story. That is not to say that there is not a place for diagnose and prescribe, or for more prescriptive teaching, or for working in a way that might be considered a top-down way. That is not to say that there is not a place for this, for that, using that methodology. Not to say that at all, or to use I call the other things a model. Yes, to use that methodology, right? Not saying that. What I am saying is that when you don't have a choice in your teaching, and that's the only way that you know how to support learning, to support learning is to sort of coercively power over it. When that's the only methodology available to you, that's when it's problematic. What I'm working with the voice teachers who I work with in the voice ped degree, who I work with in undergraduate voice pedagogy, who I work with in coaching situations, who I work with one-on-one, what I am working with those teachers to do is to not stop them from doing diagnose and prescribe pedagogy ever, or from using a top-down methodology ever, right? That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is working to recognize when that is appropriate and to use it in those cases when it is appropriate. It is appropriate in some cases, right? That's not the villain. Diagnose and prescribe isn't the villain. It's the outcome of us not examining how we use our expertise or how we are best going to use our expertise. When it's the only option we have, when it's the only way we know how to teach in the studio, that's the outcome of us not examining and not knowing what the other options are, not knowing how to build learning in a student-led agency supporting way. Because there are students who will come in and ask you and say to you, to your face, I want you to just tell me what to do. That's why I'm here. You're the expert. I don't know. You tell me what to do. That's why I'm here. I want the perfect exercise. So how student-led would you be if you were like, no, I'm not going to work with you in that way? No, there are some times when you make that choice. But the problem is when you can't make the choice, that's when we have an unexamined, that's when we have an issue with the expertise, with the fact that you have not examined your expertise, or what it means to be an expert in the studio, or what it means to be a teacher. There's nothing wrong with being an expert. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, we've got a lot of sort of like villainization of experts too, right? Going on in the world right now. There's nothing wrong with being an expert. It's how we use our expertise that's problematic. And of course, I am talking mostly in the voice studio, but also these things go into the other areas of our lives. Of course they do. So what that leads to then as well is, how do I know that I am teaching effectively if I am no longer using the parameters of, they got the audition because I told them what to do. Yes, indeed. They got the audition because I told them what to do. They smoothed out the registration because I had the right exercise. They, I don't know, they can belt because I took a course. So now I know how to belt and I can show them, or I can like give them the right exercise, and I can tell them when they're not doing it right. How do we judge the success of our teaching if we are letting go of those outcomes? Tell you what I use. I know that I am being an effective voice teacher when the singers I'm working with can make choices for themselves about what they want and how they want to get there. And when they start to say to me, rather than singing and then looking at me directly and going, was that right? It's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Little call out, little call out. I know that I'm teaching effectively when the singers I'm working with stop looking to me directly, and voice teachers too, stop looking when voice teachers are teaching and I'm working with voice teachers to teach, and they go like, was that right? Did I do the right thing? Am I like, right? When your students are looking at you like they sing and then they go immediately to you to see whether or not they did it right or wrong, you are using your expertise to tell them what to do. And also, as I said, they may want that in the moment, right? Like that may be what they're there for. And that is fair. That is okay. And also, we do not want to keep them there. We don't want to keep our students there. Many of us, myself younger too, totally, many of us are inadvertently keeping students in the sort of baby bird, you feed me, no agency, you tell me whether I'm right or wrong because we don't understand how to move students forward from that, how to move students. We don't understand. Again, we think this is what we're supposed to use our expertise for. So I know that I am teaching effectively when the singers and the teachers I am working with start to make decisions for themselves because they have the information they need to be able to risk assess what the decisions are or what the potential outcomes are. So they sing a thing and they go, oh, let me try that like 2 or 3 more times. I think I can find more of that smoothness. Yeah, one more time. Let me just see if I can find the smoothness. Great. I really loved how smooth that was, or I really loved how that was like 65% more smooth. And now I want to just see if I can find that in this one part of the song. That's how I know. For me personally, look, getting the audition, getting the getting the solo, getting the blah blah blah, doing well on exams, winning nats, all of those things can also be an indicator of whether or not you are doing effective teaching. They can also be indicators. But when they are the only indicator that you have, when that is the only assessment that you have, that is problematic. And it will drive your teaching, right? It will drive you to make sure people do things. And if they don't do things, what happens? If they don't do exactly what we tell them to do, we think they're not compliant. We think they're bad students. Well, they're just lazy. Yeah, they never seem to practice. They never practice. Yeah, they're really unteachable. They're really hard to teach. They've got this big attitude. They're really hard to teach. Or that jaw tension, it's never going to go away. Yes, yes. In a standardized test environment, this is tough to quantify. Exactly. But what we're taught to quantify, that's the problem, right? We're taught to take standardized testing assessments as the way to assess whether or not I'm doing a good job teaching. That's not that all what if that's your only assessment parameter, it will lead you to teaching to the test, right? That's all it's going to do is lead you to teaching to the test. So now students, they only know how to do a recital in one way, the way that will get them a good mark according to the rubric. They have no choices. And we also are like, and also be artistic. And they're like, I don't know how to make any choices to be artistic at this point. Thanks a lot. Right? I'm just trying to get the checklist of all the things I have to do right in order to get a good mark. That's all I'm doing. So what have we taught? In our academic programs, often what we teach singers is how to learn music quickly and how to like skate through a performance, right? That's often what we teach singers. That's the biggest lesson often that singers come away with is how to learn music quickly rather than how to make choices for my voice. Oh, this is a great question. Do you help your students formally template this process somehow, or do they just pick up the format over time? I have I am writing a book, so there's that. Some point that's going to come out. So there will be more of a formal understanding of, at some point, right, of like how of the prompts, the ways to work in this way, and also how to recognize when we are not working in this way, right? Like what are the prompts? What are the things that tell me that I'm missing opportunities to be student led, to be in this agency supporting student led way? And then what are the things that will get me back on track? So that is there. When I'm working with singers or students, when I'm working with teachers to help students to start to reframe this as well, because not only very similarly to when we go to therapy as parents and we realize, oh, shoot, And then we like, or at least this is my experience. And then we're like, I have to reparent myself at the same time as I'm trying to reparent this kid. Oh, great. So we're doing the two things at the same time, and it's messy. And that is also what's happening in our studios often, right? When we are reframing our own teaching, we are also working to help the student reframe what they should expect from an expert in a learning environment, right? And how what learning means, what learning acquisition means in a studio environment. So yes, I don't have a template. What I do talk about with teachers in terms of supporting students to understand this process in a different way is the questions, these reoccurring sort of questions, which are, what will you be able to do that you can't do now? And where are you already doing it to a certain extent? And then when we're talking about goals, such as singing an exam, doing a recital, doing a jury, doing an audition, doing, singing a solo, doing a performance, like whatever, doing a set, learning XYZ thing, right? All of those things where we do have these sort of external goals that are ways to measure, that can be ways to measure whether or not we are successful in our learning. I work with teachers to help them break down, for example, for this audition, what do I need to be able to do for the audition that I can't do right now? Let's figure it out. And then we're going to just work toward developing those things, right? And how will I know? That's the other question. How will I know when I am doing it? So if I'm working toward an audition and the audition piece, maybe it's, I don't know, music theater audition, great. So now I'm like, I'm bringing in some kind of belting song, I don't know, whatever. And I'm developing like the upper range. And we go like, okay, so what do you need to be able to do to sing this song the way you want to sing it in the audition that you can't do right now? And we go, okay, well, I don't have the mix at the top. Also, my belt feels like it's yelling, or it's like pure head voice. And also, I can't like connect with this character very well. And I feel like I'm not like blah, blah, blah. Right. So, okay, great. What will you be able to do? What will it feel like if your belt is what you want it to be? What will it sound like? How will I know that that's what it is? Right. So we're working with the student to co-develop the success parameter so that then they can start to make decisions. And yes, they do pick it up over time, but they can start to make decisions about what they want to work on and what they still want to change. And we're there supporting them to make those decisions versus telling them, okay, you got this audition, you got to do this, 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 and this. And here are the exercises. You've got to do these, and these. And again, there can be a time and place for that. I'm not saying that is, we should never do that. I'm just saying that I would love for that to not be. Oh, sorry. So we can do that. And also, what we want to do is let go of the outcome, because the actual outcome of whether they get the audition or not, what we want to assess the success of that audition by is, was I able to, the student, and as a teacher, was the student able to make decisions about what they want to do and how they want to communicate and how they want to use their voice? Did they have enough options to choose from? And if they were able to make decisions 80% of the time, they were able to do the things that they wanted to do, that is a successful audition, whether or not they get the audition or not. That's successful. So notice too how that takes the sting, if you will, out of not getting an audition. And it also validates when you do get the audition. In both, it goes both ways, right? So now, and also it means that I, as the teacher, don't have to be like, oh no, I guess we did something wrong because you didn't get the audition. Oh shoot. Okay, so next time we have to do blah, blah, blah. Now, I, as the teacher, and also I'm not like, my whole assessment of whether or not I'm teaching well is not dependent on whether or not they get the audition. I, as the teacher, now can say to that student, okay, you went into that audition wanting to have a 70% belt, a 70% mix in this section, and having it connected to this emotion. or what you wanted to communicate. And you went into that audition wanting to communicate these three things. The way you knew you were going to communicate those three things is your body was going to be in this position, your blah, 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 whatever it is, right? You went into that audition making sure that you spit out those words. And you accomplished 80% of those things in that audition. Fantastic. That's a successful audition. I know I'm a successful teacher, or I'm an effective teacher, because the singer's entire perception of themselves as a good singer is not dependent on whether or not they got the audition. It's not dependent on external circumstances. It's dependent on whether or not they got their goals, whether or not they made the decisions they wanted to make. That's how we raise artists. That's how we raise artists. That's how we support artists. There's no artistry without agency. Okay, that's a good place to stop. There's no artistry without agency. And our role as the expert is to support students to find agency by offering them the information and the exploration that allows them to make choices for themselves, not by telling them what they need to do. Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. Thanks for being here for the whole time. Love that. You're so welcome. I'm really happy that is useful. Terrific. Take care. Whew. Let me just check my notes. Let me see. Did I miss anything? Conclusion. The invitation here is not to throw out the apprenticeship model. The invitation is to examine how we understand our expertise. Oh yeah, this is a good conclusion. If we believe our job is to control the learning process, diagnose problems, and prescribe solutions, then every model will be power over, even the ones we are calling student-led. But if we understand expertise as something that can guide exploration, offer options, amplify agency, support decision-making, then the exact same apprenticeship structure or all of the learning models become collaborative, agency supporting. So there we go. There's no artistry without agency. Take good care. All right, let's end this stream over here.